أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والفجر وليال عشر والشفع والوتر والليل إذا يسر هل في ذلك قسم لذي حجر ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بعاد إرم ذات العماد التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد وثمود الذين جابوا الصخر بالواد وفرعون ذي الأوتاد الذين طغوا في البلاد فأكثروا فيها الفساد فصب عليهم ربك صوت عذاب إن ربك لبالمرصاد فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا وجاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجيء يومئذ بجهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وأنى له الذكرى يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Oh, beloved Hussein, oh, my beloved Hussein, this is Hussein, our beloved Hussein, this is Hussein, oh, beloved Hussein. 3rd of Shaban, his light was born, angels descend, his king to adorn, joy celebrate in the house of Fatima. This is Hussein, O King of Shuhada.
O Hussein, you are our savior, grandson of Rasulullah, son of Haydar, our Mawla, delight of desire.
Your father lifted the gates of Khaybar, you're by those hands of Ali nurtured. Shout with the love from the Lady of Light, fighting for right, you're our heart's respite.
O Hussein, you are our savior, grandson of Rasulullah, son of Haydar, our Mawla, delight of desire.
Brightness surrounds the light of Rasul, on his shoulders so joyful. Hussein is from me and I am from Hussein. Through Karbala my message will reign.
O Hussein, you are our savior, grandson of Rasulullah, son of Haydar, our Mawla, delight of desire.
Your stand this world did liberate, and the earth illuminate. Without you to love, we'd be without our heart. You are Hussein, we cannot be apart.
O Hussein, you are our savior, grandson of Rasulullah, son of Haydar, our Mawla, delight of desire.
Fitr Rus arrives to this cradle from afar. We seek our wings to Karbala. Lord, our hearts yearn for your Hussein. Refuge we seek with the shrine of Hussein.
Oh Hussein, you are our savior, grandson of Rasulullah, son of Haydar, our Mawla, delight of dear Zahra. Oh Hussein, you are our savior, grandson of Rasulullah, son of Haydar, our Mawla, delight of dear Zahra. Delight of dear Zahra.
السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد والثناء لله رب العالمين، بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، خاتم النبيين، رحمة للعالمين، سيدنا ومولانا شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج والعافية والنصر، واجعلنا من خير عوانه وأنصاره والمستشهدين بين يديه، وامنن علينا برضاه. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد، شجرة النبوة وموضع الرسالة ومختلف الملائكة ومعدن العلم وأهل بيت الوحي. My dear brothers and sisters, respected mu'mineen and mu'minat, assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu once again. And I begin by offering my congratulations and felicitations to the Imam of our time and to you all, my dear brothers and sisters, on the magnificent occasion of the advent of the month of Sha'ban. Sha'ban, the month of the Holy Prophet. And this is the month where in the same salawat of Sha'baniyah that I had the opportunity of reciting, we say and we recite, وَهَذَا شَهْرُ نَبِيِّكَ سَيِّدِ رُسُلِكَ شَعْبَانُ الَّذِي حَفَفْتَهُ مِنْكَ بِالرَّحْمَةِ وَالرِّضْوَانِ. This is the month of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. And this is a month that has one major special quality, that it is a month that is all encompassed. It is Mubarak. It is encompassed by the Rahmah and the Ridwan, the mercy and the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, we see within this month, the month of seeking proximity to the Holy Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, through the recitation of this beautiful salawat of Sha'baniyah, we seek to attain qurb and proximity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of the very special ways that we are given this opportunity to draw closer to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam is the special month of the surur and farah of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. It is a month of happiness and a month of felicitation in the Ahlul Bayt. As we see, the whole first half of the month of Sha'ban is filled with the birthdays of the individuals from the Ahlul Bayt, especially the people of Karbala. We have, according to some narrations, Lady Zainab on the first, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, Aba Abdullah on the third, Abul Fadl Abbas alayhi salam on the fourth, and Imam Zainul Abidin, Sayyid al-Sajidin alayhi salam on the fifth, and then followed by the other individuals, like we have Qasim ibn al-Hasan alayhi salam on the seventh, according to the narrations, and we have Ali al-Akbar alayhi salam on the 11th. culminating with the grand birthday of our Mawla, our Master Sahib al-Asri was Zaman Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Faraja on the 15th. And these events altogether are such special events that serve for us to draw nearer and closer to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam by thinking about them, reflecting upon their lives, and drawing inspiration from them. May Allah make this Mubarak to you all and to all mu'mineen and mu'minat, especially those who are afflicted with difficulties. May Allah alleviate their difficulties and alleviate the difficulties of all human beings who are in difficulty around the world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the opportunity to make the most of the month of Sha'ban as well, inshallah ta'ala. In today's discussion and this opportunity that I have to be in your presence, I would like to explore and delve deeper into a specific question that comes up in our minds when we look at the personalities and the lifestyle and basically the character of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And when we especially look at Aba Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salam, our main source of learning about Aba Abdullah al-Husayn is to see him on the plains of Karbala, in the event of the day of Ashura and the events surrounding that day. And we find not only in the words and the actions of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam, we see this height of human character and this exceptional moral virtues and the high spiritual values that are manifested, that we are mesmerized, we are taken aback by our limitedness to be able to reach these values. And sometimes this question comes, and this question is quite common as well to some extent, whereby when we look at the status of the Ahlul Bayt and their high spiritual status and their nature, sometimes we feel so limited that we start to question whether am I really able to follow a role model like the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, knowing that they're infallible. All right. So to answer this question, we would like to explore this in two steps. The first step I would like to go into is, inshallah, a brief discussion on what are we looking for in a role model. And inshallah, we will try and discuss this and go into the second section, whereby we would like to see how can we connect with the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam as role models in our life despite them being infallible. All right. So inshallah, looking at the first discussion that we would like to look at is what are we looking for in role models. So as human beings, we realize that we naturally cling to individuals that stand out for us, that have a special ambiance and a special aura to them. All right, so let's discuss this a bit more and see how can we dissect this issue and basically have a clarity on this. So when we're looking for somebody and we're looking up to somebody, there are three things that stand out for us. The very first thing that stands out for us is something along the lines of their charisma. We are attracted to them. There is something in them that draws us to them. All right. So for example, maybe there is a certain soccer player or a hockey player that has a very special style of playing soccer or hockey. All right. Their skills in sport are drawing us towards them. All right. So that is something that is there in them. That is a quality that we seek for ourselves as well. We desire it. We want it. We are attracted towards it. So let's keep this first C in our mind. All right. There are three C's that I would like to look at. So the first one is this charisma, this catchiness to the role model that we're looking up to. Another part of that is compatibility. There are so many qualities that different individuals have, but there is something in that person that not only is attractive, but is also compatible with us. I feel that I can benefit from this quality. I feel that I am in sync with this quality that I see in front of me. I feel I can feel fulfillment and I can be fulfilled internally by following and emulating this quality. So for example, if somebody wants to be a soccer player and they find in one of the famous soccer stars a very important style of striking, they would actually look up to them, not only because there's an attractiveness there is something charismatic, but there is something that they want to take from them for themselves, right? So there is something that they feel is compatible to their life and to their skills. So that's the second C. The first one was charisma or catchiness, and the second one is compatibility. Now the third one, which is quite important as well, and this is something that we unknowingly sometimes acquire and attribute and accept, and that is credibility. When we are faced with somebody as a role model, we feel within ourselves a certain degree of questioning. Is this person credible? Is this person authentic? Can I actually follow them in what they are doing? Not only they have something attractive in them, not only something which they have in them is compatible with me, but I want to be sure that this person is credible. All right. So for the sake of example, if this person is a superstar in soccer, or he's authorized by the soccer federation, or whatever bodies there are which are considered the authorities in that field, well, that person will be seen with the eyes of credibility. So with this in mind, obviously, we find when we look up to somebody or when we're placed in a situation, we always, knowingly or unknowingly, are looking for these three qualities. And when we are satisfied that this X person has not only the credibility and the compatibility, but has that thing that I want and is attractive, and that is that charisma and that catchy thing, I would be looking up to this person and would want to follow them. So with this said, let's sit back and reflect on the life of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, and especially Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhis salam. And we find on one hand the level of charisma that the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have is immense. What part of the life of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam lacks charisma? Every single thing, every single act, every single saying, every single even attention or body language of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam carries not only a lesson for us, it is simply attractive. All right? It is simply to that level that as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses the Holy Prophet and tells him in the Quran, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ, you're at the height of moral character. You're at the height of noble values. You're at the height of that spiritual framework that nobody lies higher and greater when the comparison of morality and virtue is presented. So Rasulullah and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam likewise are at that height of charisma. They're at the height of us wanting and desiring things that they have. If they have kindness, we want to be kind. If they're generous, we want to be generous. If they're patient, we want to be patient. If they are able to persevere in the best possible way, we feel an inspiration within ourselves to persevere in a similar way. All right? So on the side of charisma and on the side of attractiveness, the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have everything we may need to be able to look up to them and be attracted towards them. Or obviously one very important thing is for us to increase our knowledge about them. And this is a very important step. The more we learn about the Ahlul Bayt, the more we research their life, the more we reflect upon their lifestyle, the more we'll become attracted to their charisma, the more we will desire to be like them. And this is indeed the very first step. When we talk about spirituality, when we talk about mental health, and we talk about the need for us to strengthen our spirituality, one of the major ways that we can help ourselves in this connection is to bond with the lifestyle of the Ahlul Bayt and constantly review the different events, stories, and the ahadith and the traditions that we have from each of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam to begin with. All right, so inshallah this will be a step that we can take by increasing our ma'rifah and our knowledge of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. The other thing that we want to see in somebody that we would like to look up to, as we talked about just shortly, was the compatibility within them. What is attractive may not always be compatible with us. There may be some things that may be attractive, but for our long-term benefit, they may not be compatible and good for us. But when we come to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, everything that is attractive in the Ahlul Bayt is not only compatible for our dunya, but it is surely for our akhirah. And whatever the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam stood for was not only attractive, but it was completely in sync and completely fulfilling to the human soul. And we find that the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam are at that high level of compatibility despite being human beings. All right? This is where the discussion enters into this discussion of infallibility. And we come up with this situation that how can I follow the Ahlul Bayt while they are infallible? And we find that this question can be addressed in different ways, but one of the ways that we can address this question is, what is the meaning of infallibility? It needs to be clarified first. When we look at the meaning of the word ma'asum, and we say that Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam are ma'asum, we sometimes think that they are held back from sinning. All right? They are sinless, but does that mean that they're forced not to sin? No, that's not the case. When we talk about the word isma, or being a ma'asum, the word isma comes from the meaning of prevention. All right? When a person with his self-initiated prevention of sinning acquires a state whereby Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects them even more. All right? So this exists especially for the Anbiya, for the prophets of Allah, and it exists especially for the Ma'asumin alayhimus salam, where since they are at the highest level of taqwa, the highest levels of God consciousness, the highest level of piety, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, due to their self-control, protects them even more. All right? And likewise, it is a door open to all of us. It is something that the more taqwa we have in our lives, the more we protect and shield ourselves from sinning, Allah's nusra and help comes to protect us even more. All right? So this is something that we can experience in our own lives. And this is the simple meaning of infallibility. When a person seeks to be sinless, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects them even more by removing them from situations, by helping them come out of situations whereby they do not end up sinning, they do not end up slipping into sin, or into situations where they may be, unfortunately, drawn towards evil. So inshallah, this is something that we can consider and reflect on. But when we look at the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, we sometimes feel that on one hand, yes, they are human beings, whereas all of the prophets have constantly repeated this. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, likewise in the Holy Quran, is told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "Qul, O Prophet, say this to the people, Innama ana basharum mithlukum. I am nothing but a human being like you. Yuha ilayya." But the only difference being is that I receive revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This rule of having in syncness or synchrony with the person who is guiding us is a general and a firm absolute rule of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this in the Holy Quran in different ways, but one of the ways that He uses as an example is by bringing in the example of angels. And He says, had this earth been filled with angels walking about, I would have sent towards them an angel as a prophet. لَنَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَلَكًا رَسُولًا. Right? So the importance of being in sync, the importance of being compatible is so important for Allah Himself that He does not give anyone, any species, any group of people, a leader or a guide towards goodness except from within that same type of people, within the same species. And that is very important because we need to have that connection. We need to feel that there is a compatibility between us and that person that we need to look up to, and we follow their role modeling. So when it comes to the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, likewise, they were people who used to eat food like us. لا يأكلون الطعام ويمشون في الأسواق, for example, in line with what the Quran says about the prophets, that they would eat like people, they would eat food, and they would walk in the streets, and they would walk in the markets, and they would actually go about fulfilling their needs as simple human beings. But the difference being here is that they set the highest standards of moral virtue and the highest standards of spiritual values for us as human beings, showing us and becoming a hujjah and becoming a proof upon us and have an argument against us on the Day of Judgment, so that we don't end up saying that, oh Allah, we were human beings just like them, but we could not do something, whereas they have actually shown us through their character that despite being a human being, despite being a father, despite being a son, despite being a husband, despite being a member of society, I can be a family person just like you and me. I can be I can be a person of society just like all of us. And I have personal feelings, as we see in the life of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam on the plains of Karbala, when he lost his sons, when he lost his brothers, when he lost and his companions were martyred. He would feel sadness for that loss. He would have a sense of overbearing pain on him. It's not as if he was not human, that he would not feel these feelings and emotions. Rather, he was a human being. But in his level of isma and infallibility, he would not commit something that was out of line, that was displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is another lesson that we learn from the life of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, to that extent that their compatibility with us is so high that they actually went through all of the things that a normal human being would go through. But they showed us perseverance, they showed us those high moral values and virtues. The third point that we raised about somebody being a role model, besides being charismatic, besides being compatible, was their credibility. The Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, in their credibility, have no match. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on one hand endorses them completely. Not only He endorses what they ask us to do, but He in the background also primarily endorses them. So for example, we have verses in the Quran that help us understand this point. And we have, for example, the verse that tells us, وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُ. Whatever the Prophet gives you, take it. Whatever the Prophet keeps you away from, stay away from it. So this is a reminder for us that the Prophet is such a role model that whatever he says, whether it is through the words of the Quran or it is through the words of his own, through the ahadith, we should take those things seriously, and we should keep away from the things that he has asked us to keep away from. And we find likewise in the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala implores and reminds us that أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنْكُمْ. Obey Allah and obey the messenger and the ones who have been endowed with the affair, which are the Ahlul Bayt, the A'imma alayhimus salam. And we should be in a state of obedience and following and accepting their role modeling and inshallah walking in their footsteps. So with this, we realize that the infallibility that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them is on one hand not only initiated by them because of their purification and their high self-initiated status that they have within the realm of creation, and between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that proximity that exists. But on the other hand, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by granting them this endorsement, is actually showing us His approval and the credibility of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. If they would not have been ma'asum, if they would not have been sinless, if they not had been credible from the perspective of role modeling and guiding us towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we would not have had any role models that we would have felt certain about for 100% level of certainty. We would have always doubted, we would have always questioned that is this person, is this leader, is this guide truly a guide who does not make mistakes and will not misguide me on my journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we find all of these coming together in the people of Karbala, especially in Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, where we find his charisma was such that people would be drawn towards him. And besides his life and in the time of the Holy Prophet himself, there were people who had not even seen the sons or the grandsons of Rasulullah, Imam al-Hasan and Imam al-Hussein, but when they would hear about them and come to meet them with their own incorrect preconceived notions, when they would be in the presence of the Aimma, especially Imam al-Hasan and Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, they would realize that these individuals are truly the grandsons of the Holy Prophet. The character of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was very attractive. He would have people feel at ease with him, and he would have people come from all different backgrounds towards him. Such was the level of the character of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Inshallah, an inspiration for us to be charismatic in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be attractive as well towards people in such a way that when they look at us, they are reminded of high moral values and spiritual virtues, and they become drawn towards them. The other point that we find in Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam is his life on the plains of Karbala, especially those difficulties that he faced. We find in them such high moral virtues and such high standards that nobody can deny that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam indeed stands as a person who is an epitome of justice and human freedom. It is through the message of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam that people even today feel a sense of empowerment, feel a sense of inspiration to do the right things. And it is indeed that high degree of connection that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam had with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that put him in this prime position to be not only charismatic, not only be compatible with the human state, but also be a credible role model for all of us to follow. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the right of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, and by the right of the people of Karbala, Abu al-Fadl Abbas alayhi salam and Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, and all of them, all of those who are born in these days of Sha'ban, these blessed days and nights, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the tawfiq and success in following in the footsteps of the Ahlul Bayt, especially the footsteps of Imam al-Hussein and the Aimma and the people of Karbala. And to that extent, that if we continue Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's special individuals who are considered the Ansarullah, who are considered the helpers of Allah. These are the people who have become purified by sacrificing themselves in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we emulate their role modeling, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will insha'Allah grant us the tawfiq to be raised with them insha'Allah on the Day of Judgment as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from us all, and may Allah hasten the reappearance of our Imam, Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif. Wassalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد، شجرة النبوة وموضع الرسالة ومختلف الملائكة ومعدن العلم وأهل بيت الوحي. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد، الفلك الجارية في اللجج الغامرة يأمن من ركبها ويغرق من تركها. المتقدم لهم مارق والمتأخر عنهم زاهق، واللازم لهم لاحق. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد، الكهف الحصين وغياث المضطر المستكين وملجأ الهاربين وعصمته المعتصمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد صلاة كثيرة تكون لهم رضا، ولحق محمد وآل محمد أداء وقضاء، بحول منك وقوة يا رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الطيبين الأبرار الأخيار، الذين أوجبت حقوقهم وفرضت طاعتهم وولايتهم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد، وعمر قلبي بطاعتك، ولا تخزني بمعصيتك، وارزقني مواساة من قدرت عليه من رزقك، بما وسعت علي من فضلك ونشرت علي من عدلك، وأحييتني تحت ظلك. وهذا شهر نبيك سيدي رسلك شعبان، الذي حففته منك بالرحمة والرضوان، الذي كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم يدأب في صيامه وقيامه في لياليه وأيامه، بخوعا لك في إكرامه وإعظامه إلى محل حمامه. اللهم فاعنا على الاستنان بسنته فيه ونيل الشفاعة لديه. اللهم واجعله لي شفيعا مشفعا، وطريقا إليك مهيعا، واجعلني له متبعا، حتى ألقاك يوم القيامة عني راضيا، وعن ذنوبي غاضيا. قد أوجبت لي منك الرحمة والرضوان، وأنزلتني دار القرار ومحل الأخيار، وصل يا رب على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.